Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the case study where we're excited to have Justin here talking with us today. But I wanted to remind you that we're doing the case study as a video lessons learned. So hopefully you're able to use it and find challenges that have occurred on other projects that you're working on, or be able to use it to prevent any challenges in the future. So, with that, I would like to introduce to you our guest, who is Justin. Justin, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, man. Appreciate the invite, Miss Corey.
Yes, I miss that Miss Corey, that Southern hospitality that I used to get when I was going to school at Texas
Oh,
A&M. But
yes,
um,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm in North Carolina, so we're gonna bring it back.
Beautiful. Well, I know that you guys are probably experiencing some challenges of your own there. And so, prayer to you and all of your neighbors, and hope everyone's staying safe in these current weather conditions. But why don't you just take a few moments to tell everyone about your background and how you got to where you are?
Yeah. Um. My name is Justin Uyar. I'm currently a senior superintendent with Rogers Builders in Charlotte, North Carolina. And my background, how I got into construction, was growing up. I played baseball in high school, and like everybody that played baseball in high school, my goal was I'm going to go pro one day and play professionally. And so I tried to do that, and I bounced around to a couple different junior colleges to try to play baseball, and then got cut from both of them. So said, okay, I can't really make baseball a career anymore. So what I want to do with the rest of my life? I ended up going to school at Clemson University and
Oh,
studied civil slash structural engineering. Structural engineering was fascinating to me at the time. It still is, but studied structural engineering. And so when I was in school, I started working part time for a structural engineering firm, doing some construction administration and some drafting. And every time we would go out to the job site, I would just be amazed at what was going on. Like, what are those people doing? What's that big thing in the air with stuff hanging off of it? What's this equipment doing? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? And it would just amaze me. I mean, it would amaze me to the point where they would threaten to leave me on the job. They'd be like, "Hey, we're going back to the office. Are you coming?" And and I never called their bluff, so I always went back with them. But it would always amaze me. And so getting that exposure, working part time for an engineering firm, showed me, hey, there's this whole world of construction management. And a lot of my background's in commercial construction, but hey, there's this whole world of construction management. And so ended up going to work for a commercial general contractor in Atlanta to start my career. Was in Atlanta for a few years, and then been in Charlotte for almost 9 years now, and worked for a few different firms, but all the experience has lined itself with commercial general contracting. So it it gives me the opportunity to, at the very least, appreciate a good set of drawings and some well detailed plans.
Well, I appreciate some of that background. I think it's often that for me, I'm a construction teacher. My dad was an operator, construction operator. My mom was a teacher. We often follow what is familiar to
Mhm.
us. And
Sure.
so sometimes when we get this opportunity of discovery and an open door to a new world that is able to excite us, then it can help drive the passion to help us help the curiosity make us want to learn more about it in order to really understand what direction we want to go or what we want to do. And so it's fun that your path kind of started in one direction, but then your curiosity led you to this big new picture of how you wanted to spend your one third of your life in your career working.
Sure. And it's even in that bubble, even that construction management bubble, when I first started, I was on you'll hear the term a lot, office and field side. And my philosophy is there is no sides. The roles
Love that.
the roles focus on different things to get the project complete. But um, when I started, I was more of a what a lot of firms would call project engineer. So RFIs and submittals and meeting minutes, construction administration, and so even in that, I'm like, hey, what's this thing over here on the job side? And kind of like look around the trailer, like, okay, no one's watching. I'm gonna go sneak out and see what's going on. And so even getting into general contracting, there was that switch of just taking a different career path in that bubble to be in field management and now a senior superintendent.
Well, fantastic. I'm sure that as a senior superintendent, then you've seen many of challenges on your projects. And so today we're going to be talking about a challenge. And what we want to be able to do is have this challenge exposed so that others who are dealing with similar situations or are potentially going to be dealing with this in the future can see how you responded to it, but then also be able to see in reflection how maybe there are some things that you might have even done differently so that the challenge doesn't exist at all. So, with that being said, what's the challenge that you're bringing to us today?
Oh, you put me on the spot. See, there's so many that it's tough to pick one. Give me just a few seconds so I can pick the right one to illustrate.
Well, while you're strolling over all of the many problems that we have in this complex industry, I'll just remind everyone that, we're losing a huge portion of our experience and knowledge that is out in the site. So we have a lot of seasoned people who are getting ready for retirement. And so we want to do everything that we can to be able to capture that knowledge. And people like Justin, who volunteer their time to come on to this video and present this information to you, are extremely valuable to myself, my students, and to the construction community. So I'm really grateful to be able to have him here today. So that's all the time you get, Justin. Step
You
up to the
plug
plate and hit a
you
home
plug
run.
you plugged that very well, Miss Corey. Very well. You've done this before. Um, so the one that comes to mind recently is I was doing a school project, and in developing, or when I got to the project, we had our baseline schedule already developed. And so for those that aren't familiar, baseline schedule is the initial schedule in a project that everything gets compared to during the course of construction. So typically baseline's established at the beginning of the job, and then every month or whatever cadence the team decides, they'll do a schedule update to say, hey, how are we doing schedule wise with progress in the field compared to how we thought we were doing in the original schedule. And so when I got to the project, the baseline schedule was established, and the project was a three-story steel frame building, public school with masonry walls for the predominant corridors and large classrooms. A few metal stud frame walls, but steel frame building with a lot of block walls in it. And so we just broke ground. We hadn't started foundations yet. We hadn't started steel erection yet. But in conversations with the steel erection contractor, the foundation contractor, and the masonry contractor, we're tying start dates and sequence and equipment down. And I start to realize that there's a portion of this design that we didn't account for, in the fact that the shear loading in this building was through the CMU shear walls, not through the steel framing. So a lot of times in a steel frame building, you'll see X bracing or Y bracing for wind and seismic. And so as I'm going through the drawings and putting the plan together and looking at it, start asking myself, hey, where's the wind bracing? Where's the seismic bracing? Dive into it a little bit further, and have a few conversations with the engineer. And he said, "Hey, I have everything running through the shear walls. There is no bracing." And so what that meant for us was we had to change the sequence of how we were going to build this, because in a regular steel frame building with bracing, you can build the entire structure and then deck it and then make individual floor placements. In this scenario, with the CMU walls acting as the lateral resistance, you almost have to build it floor by floor. And so we had to take our baseline that was built one way off of the initial assumption, a traditional steel frame building, and change that and adjust that to align with what we actually had, what was missed on the plans in a CMU shear wall.
So, Justin, this is an excellent example. And when we find these challenges, the point is not to try to find blame in someone. The point is
Sure.
to focus on the resolution of the issue or problem. But as you saw it, your company had an assumption of how you were going to proceed with means and methods to produce the end deliverable of a steel building, which is something that your company has expertise in. And so when you went through and your team built the schedule, you built the schedule based on the way that you have performed in the past in erection of these buildings. And then when you got the drawings and really went deep into the drawings and started recognizing that there was a different design and instruction that was being created by the structural engineer or the architect, you found that your original means and methods would have to be all modified to meet the type of design that now was being asked to build this particular steel structure.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And where this takes me, especially if someone early in their career, is a lot of times we can make things sound simple. And if you say, hey, how are you going to build a building? It at a high level is simple. You pour a foundation, you build the structure, you put a roof on, you bring power to the building, and then you complete all your finishes. And that's a very basic high level sequence. Where the meat and potatoes are, and where the opportunity to execute well and develop a good plan is in the blueprints. And that would be where I would recommend anybody start, and especially someone early in their career. I still tell people to this day, I think that field engineer is one of the hardest positions on a project, because you have authority in that position. You have some decision making authority and some autonomy, but you also are very early in your career, and most of the team in the job site knows that you don't know as much as others. And so that can become a very tough balance of authority and autonomy with knowledge and skill set experience. And the place to go there to level the playing field is the plans and specs. I mean, if we use those to develop the plan, it takes the some of the guesswork out of it, and that becomes the common language that everybody's speaking to get the project done.
Yeah, but even to your point, you were able to catch that because you had had experience in previous designs of what to expect with that wind bracing. But someone who's new to the project or even new to construction might see a set of drawings and have an assumption that the structural engineer already knows how they want it done and what they want done, and might not have been able to pick that out of those drawings. So sometimes those young people, there's a lot of intimidation of being able to really even express themselves or say something because they're like, well, I just don't know enough. And so in that position, how would you provide some confidence to that field engineer when they're going through these specifications and drawings in order to be able to be part of that team that can help that project be successful?
Yeah. So I'll talk through it from two perspectives. One perspective being that person, being that younger person in this example, is developing your curiosity. So understanding how something works. And in this scenario, how something works doesn't mean that you look at a set of plans for a steel frame building and say, oh no, that W10 should actually be a W14 because of moment of inertia. That's engineering. But but
Uh, no, I love that because I will tell you there are sometimes when we get so deep into the weeds that we can't see the forest, right? And so I think
sure,
it's such an important point that when people they get upset about oh, construction managers really don't know anything, they're just a generalist. Well, sometimes you need someone who knows a little bit about everything so they know where all the pieces go, and then they're able to lean on the experience of the experts in the path. But obviously the more construction experience you have, the better you're going to be at your job. But I love that example because it's so true.
yeah. And so it's not that, right? Like that's engineering. It's hey, what's holding? We have this steel frame puzzle. What's holding it up? Our foundations. Okay, we understand that part. What's keeping it from moving sideways? And that curiosity, right? Was okay. What keeps the building from moving sideways? And someone that's new in their career may not know what X bracing is, but if they can start to understand just some basic load paths, some basic how tos of building physics, then it may just trigger them to ask the question. And usually it's asking the question that leads to finding the problem. Um, on the flip side of that, the other perspective as a manager is you have to encourage those questions. If you're a manager, the philosophy truly is there's no dumb questions. And if someone's going down a rabbit hole and they're chasing something and they ask a question that other people would already know, you can't show that. You can't say, "Oh, no, you should already know that." Encourage it, right? High five. Hey, thanks for checking that. That's a good path to go down. Let me explain it to you, and then develop that curiosity that way.
You know, that's a really important point as far as the leadership that managers have on these job sites and helping people feel comfortable in asking questions. And that I know that there's some people out there who vehemently disagree with your statement that there are no stupid questions because sometimes it can feel like, come on, use some common sense in what we're talking about. Sometimes common sense seems to be gone. But I
Sure.
believe that what you're saying is exactly true, and that we all need to be careful about how we structure our questions and how we structure our answers, because that will build the confidence for them to be able to continue that curiosity. You know, it's like very similar to when we were a child. We asked why, until our parents finally said, because I said so. And especially this younger generation that's coming into the workforce, they're not accepting that answer anymore. They want to know why. But sometimes seasoned people can feel defensive because the why seems like it's challenging the description that they're trying to provide. And I think that as long as you understand as a seasoned professional that you're not being challenged, you're being asked for your mentorship and your guidance in this particular situation, that it gives you an opportunity to be able to share your knowledge. And so, for young people to make sure that they're structuring their questions correctly in order for the seasoned individuals to be able to easily release this workmanship knowledge that they have.
Yeah, 100%. And I would recommend this for anybody that's asking the question is lead with how you got to the question. So if you just ask, uh, what is W12 by 50? Someone may say, oh, that's an obvious answer. If you say, hey, I was reviewing the steel shop drawings and I'm comparing them to the design documents and everything looks like it's lined up for the grid line. But when I look at this label on this line right here, it says W 12 by 50. What does that mean? That question and that structure is a lot better received for someone to answer than, hey, what is this?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that suggestion. I think that is fantastic. And so When you are going through this challenge and you're looking at you said the schedule and how this
Mhm.
changed the schedule. I'm sure this also changed the cost because it changed the means and methods of how you were doing things. So now possibly you had to have different equipment or forklifts or a crane or something involved that might not have been involved in the first type of building scenario. How did you adjust all of this? I mean, this is a big adjustment but there's two things. It's a big adjustment, but it's happening at the very beginning of the job, which gives you more control over being able to save costs throughout the entire job instead of finding out about it somewhere in the middle. And
Sure.
it gives you to be able to step back and take a look at both schedule and budget. So, how did you guys address that?
Yeah, and I'll say this, schedule challenges are often the hardest because a lot of things in a schedule and a lot of things in the course of a project change. The one thing that no one will agree to changing is that end date. So that end date is that end date, and if you're the client, we're going to get our building on time. The stuff in the middle, okay, we can move this and change that, and
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that, but I think it's also important to note that a lot of times, and this needs to change if construction companies want to be successful, but a lot of times the person creating the schedule or doing the estimate are not included in the completion of the entire project. So when you are going to be doing that project, you need to have a superintendent or someone who's going to be involved in the actual production of that project, involved in both schedule and bidding, so that some of those aspects can be known up front before you start getting and implementing the work.
yeah, 100%. And I think that's so like use the new generation that you mentioned. I do think that's where that generation has an advantage because they're not afraid to raise their hand. They're not afraid to say, "Hey, what about this? What about that? Hey, can I be included in this meeting? Can I try this?" And so everything's a reciprocal relationship. I think part of it is stepping up and volunteering and saying, "Hey, I know we haven't normally done this before, but I'd like to be a part of developing the schedule for the next project." And then on the company's end to say, "Hey, we've really struggled on these past couple because we keep running into the same mistakes. How do we fix that?" Going back to this example, it in this example was a we called it early, but not so early that the end date is changing. So we know we're locked in here, and we know that hey, we have to turn this school over on time because kids are going to class. And so biggest thing, first step that I would recommend for anybody is get all of the players in the room. I think sometimes as speaking as a general contractor, the bad habit we have is we'll have conversation with contractor A, back to us, to then have a conversation with contractor B, back to us, to then go back to A, back to us, back to B. And so if you can cut some of those ties to say, hey, let's all sit at the table and put everything out there and figure out how to do it with parameters. It doesn't mean that just because we have a problem doesn't mean we can not finish the job on time, doesn't mean that we can add a lot of cost to the job. It means that we now got to get creative and do a little bit more sharpening of our pencil to figure out how to accomplish this. And usually, in my experience, that's how we get there. I mean, I think it's human nature for people to take the common approach in the beginning of a project or in planning. I think it's very easy to say, this is how we've always done it, and it works. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then I think through the course of a project and through the course of challenges is when you have to start to say, hey, we've always done it like A, but could we do it like B? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that that's really important, and that can be really hard, right? We don't like recreating the wheel in construction, and we've already kind of figured it out one way. But I think one of the things that we really need to recognize is being able to lean on some of this technology and tools that are coming out that a lot of times in the construction industry, we tend to be very resistant. And it's because it's unfamiliar, it's an unknown. And that's why having some of these younger people who are not afraid to raise their hand and really understand a little bit more about the fluency of technology can come in and, support and give confidence to some of those seasoned workers who are more relying on their experience and knowledge to be able to get certain things done.
Yeah, and that's and I'll say everything's a two-way street, right? So for the next 20 minutes, you'll probably hear me say that a few times, but that's a two-way street. Technology is a great supplement, but it doesn't replace experience and knowledge and doing the homework on your set of documents to make sure that you understand everything. And I think that's where sometimes we can always go back to the basics. I mean, they built a whole lot of stuff that's still standing way before they had computers that to this day is still standing. So we can always go back to the basics and do the fundamentals. And then I think supplement the fundamentals with technology that makes things easier, efficient, and saves time. Time's the biggest thing. I mean, here's what I think a lot of folks early in their career struggle with, and even seasoned folks, I struggle with this every day, is the amount of hours in a day and the amount of work that you have to get done, and trying to understand from an individual perspective what your workload is and how long it takes you to do things. So not to get into like time boxing versus time blocking and personal organization, but just the awareness of understanding it may take me an hour to do the same thing that it takes you 10 minutes to do. And so if technology can close that gap and give me 50 minutes of my day back, then that's a great use.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I think it brings up two things. First and foremost, each individual needing to understand their power skills. And so you spend the most time in those skills that you're very good at. And skills can be things that you've learned, or skills can be things that are intimately innate to you and your person. So, say, for instance, organization and management, some people are just really good at it while other people are not. And so being able to identify that in yourself so that you can see lanes then that you're weak in, and then try to find people on your team who like doing that or who are good at that portion so that they can spend their time in that. The other thing is, and I just had this conversation with a student last night because he's like, do I have to use AI in this class because I'm morally against it? And I said, no, you don't have to use it. But if you don't start getting familiar with how to create it as a tool to be able to accelerate some of those things that you're not good at, then you're missing out and you really are at a disadvantage for yourself. So I know, like with superintendents, they often just don't like writing daily reports or writing a letter or putting together meeting minutes. Those are repetitive systems that can clearly be done by AI that should not be an embarrassment, but should be an opportunity for them to gain back their time. Instead of taking 45 minutes to write a letter, it can take you 5 minutes and then 5 minutes for you to review what's been produced. So you automatically are able to start capturing your time back. And then you only use the tool where you feel comfortable using it. But just like you said, if you don't go back and review and you're being lazy about it and you're not using your construction knowledge of workflow and collaboration and how things connect, if you're not using that knowledge in the production of the prompt that you're creating for AI, then the outcome is not going to be worth anything for you. So it can't just be a copy and paste situation.
Yeah, 100%. And I like the fact that you brought up awareness, because I think that's the key. That's the door opener for people getting into the industry is understanding understanding team dynamics, understanding communication, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, understanding what you can control and not control.
Exactly.
Some parts of the job and some parts of the job description are not glamorous and they're not fun, like daily reports. No one, I can almost guarantee you, not one superintendent ever got into construction to write daily reports.
I
But
agree, and I was telling my students this last night is that when I was doing field reports, I was like, "This is ridiculous. We're just doing the same thing we did yesterday, but in a different spot," you know? But
sure.
when I became a project manager and saw how important it was in the use of those daily reports in my negotiations of change orders, in my production of historical data for the project and the progress, it really inspired me to have more comprehensive daily reports that could be
Hmm.
used. And I was in a tremendous lawsuit situation where we had to go back 8 years after the fact to deposition, and my daily reports are what the lawyers relied on. And I was so proud of that because they were comprehensive. It was telling the story of the progress of the project. And I think even like I like to use the example for superintendents is when you're a superintendent and you ask the runner to go to Home Depot and pick up some tools and they go and do it and then the invoice gets stuck in the driver's side door of the pocket of the truck and you as a superintendent have to iron it out and put a code on it. If you're the runner and you know that's what the superintendent has to do and it pisses the superintendent off every time he has to do it because it takes up more time, then maybe as the runner you would spend more time being more careful with those invoices. And so it is really important that we understand the roles of everyone on our team so that we can produce our work in a way that rolls a red carpet for the next person who's the connector to whatever it is that we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. You hit that's why you have your own show, Miss Corey, because you just hit the nail on the head with that one. And to me, what does that take? That takes awareness. That takes looking at somebody else on the team and saying, hey, how is what I'm doing affecting that person? And we have this
Yes.
bad habit in construction. I mean, just this nasty habit of thinking that someone else's job is easier and that my job is always harder than someone else's. And I would encourage anybody, I mean, I don't care if it's early in your career or seasoned, to spend a day doing what a teammate does to develop a little bit of appreciation for how hard it can be. Because yeah, I mean, that's just one nasty habit we got in construction that I hope we can change in the industry.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We have to remember that most of us are type A personalities, which sometimes don't play well together in the sandbox because
Sure.
everybody has the ego that is on top and more authoritative. And we have in the past recognized that as being leadership instead of really understanding what leadership is. And that is the support and service of everyone on your team so that as a collective, you can complete the successful completion of the project, which really is the focus. The successful completion of your project is where everyone needs to be focusing. And with that type A personality, you mentioned the word control. Sometimes we want to control everything, but your statement of understanding that we can control what we can control and we can have satisfaction in that, but we need to be able to release what's not in our control so that others can be able to support in those areas. So that was a perfect statement. I love that. And so, Justin, as we're wrapping up here, I really appreciate your time. I just want to recognize that what we started talking about was a challenge that could happen on any job site where the bidding team that created the schedule for the project did so based off of past experience on how to build an end deliverable of a steel building. In doing that, they got to the project, started looking at the drawings and reviewing. And in that, you recognize that the way that you guys have built the projects in the past, your means and methods of doing this was not conclusive with the design that had been provided by the structural engineer and architect. And so you had to do a rearrange and you had to redo the schedule in order to be able to meet the new means and methods. And so there might have also been some budget review that needed to happen with the different aspects of the project that was going to have a different cost impact. Again, always with the goal of maintaining the end due date, which was contractual, and the amount that you had committed to. And then you also brought up the leadership that's so important in us being able to lead those that are coming into the industry and do so through curiosity and being respectful in how we ask questions and how we answer questions. Whew. That was a
Sure.
lot that you gave us
I'll,
today. I really appreciate it. It was a
well,
very full
uh,
conversation. What else would you like to end the day with here?
I mean, I'll end it on this story where it hit me because um, to become successful in your career, there's this perception that it's getting stuff done. And that is true. That is a part of the equation. If you don't get stuff done, then you're not going to move up and be successful. But I used to have a bad habit of I'd go out to walk the job and I just had something on my mind, whatever it was I was going to look at. And I have my schedule with me and I'm walking the job. And I would just ask questions to foreman on the job relative to whatever I was looking at. Hey, what's the status of this? When's this coming? Et cetera, et cetera. And so it hit me one day that I was doing that, and I was talking to a foreman named Jose, and I go to Jose, what about the material? What about this? What about the manpower? And he's kind of frustrated with me. And so I said, like, hey man, what's wrong? And he said, for once, it'd be nice if you started the conversation with like, hey man, good morning. How's your day going? And I'm like, shit, you're right. Like, that's you're right. Kind of realize that about myself and in that scenario. So yeah, leadership is getting stuff done, and there's all the technical part of it. But also, we work with just a bunch of good people in the industry, and so those short 30-second to 2-minute "How are your days? How are the kids doing?" can go a long way in just building a connection.
Really important point, and I appreciate it because I do the same thing. My mind is always on the task, and that can be an internal DNA thing. Sometimes introverts have a tendency to be very direct and focused on the work itself instead of socially wanting to interact with others. But it is about how others feel on the job, and that increases and helps their performance. I don't always go into these sides of discussion with my construction people, but I feel that they're capable of learning it, and if they understand it, it'll make it easier. But especially with women entering the construction workforce, a lot of times it's like people, we need more women in construction. And that's just not true. We need more women in construction who want to be in construction and who understand what construction is so that they can have that thicker skin to be able to deal with the one or two situations that may turn them off or away from the construction industry. Because the construction industry needs women because of the change of modern construction going into more innovative, diverse, flexible, adaptable situations where that's the skill set of women, of being able in traditional roles to cover everything else while men focus on linear production and protection. And so as men are relearning their role, because as you said, in construction, brute strength and grit was really what got it done in the day. And now with the innovation of technology coming in, men are having to adjust the appreciation of production saying their worth and being more aware of the importance of planning before implementation so that we can be more careful with these tight budgets and these complex projects, ensuring our profit. So it's not just about movement and getting something done, it's also about how it's implemented. And so with that, traditional roles, I always love being able to understand that we're different, not one better than the other. And so just really important in the explanation that you gave of us all working together. So we might as enjoy what it is that we're doing. And there are a lot of good people in construction that can make it really fun when you're out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a lot of my good friends are in construction. My best friend I met in construction. I mean, it's amazing when you, and it's going to sound like such a cliche term, but when you go through the fire with somebody on something on a project, how much that can create a bond.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it's a brotherhood, sisterhood. When I was working out on the job site and not having to do the intellectual showdown of, just showing up for work and working hard for 8 hours and going home, I miss those days. There are
Yeah.
days that I miss. So Justin, thank you so much for staying here today with us and sharing your challenge. Can you let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Justin Newyar with Rogers Builders.
All right. Well, thank you again very much for being here today. And I just want to remind everybody that we are doing this on Fridays. And with that, I still have the programs available and open. We're doing our practical application, construction management essentials. And then we just launched the Executive Professional. So the Executive Edge is a two-part series for those that are wanting to move from superintendent or senior project manager into a C-suite role like vice president or operations manager. And then we have our monthly CM Skill Builder, where it's just a monthly membership available to your employees to learn everything that you need to know that's not in a textbook. So thank you again, everyone. We will see you next Friday.